There's a man. He was just a down-and-out traitor. He finally got a bowl of porridge from the governor's mansion. But he never expected the porridge was poisoned. Before he died, he dreamed of having a night with Valkyrie. But this was not a dream. But it was true. As a result, the Valkyrie's reputation was ruined and was criticized by the world. But the Valkyrie alone bore the rumors. She let me go and helped me become a Morong master. From now on, I will lead the dragon baby to quietly grow stronger and then amaze all of you. Marry me legally, Valkyrie. The story begins. In the center of the city, a graceful sculpture stands. As soon as you step into the city, you can forget him as soon as you look up. He. In the dim light, she exudes a unique night moonlight. Her pure, holy, beautiful, and dignified face will make everyone who enters and exits the city involuntarily hold their breath. She is the mayor of Yang City, Li Yangzi. Yes, famous horse, a down-and-out peasant. He encountered robbers while delivering goods to Yongchang. Now he is penniless. I finally got a bowl of porridge from the city lord's charity. But he didn't expect there was fish in the porridge, in the dream of drug-induced brainwashing and chaos. Yusu and Zhu Cheng. And the sculpture of the five gods combined together and became a vivid, complete, and lifelike beauty. She was charming and flushed, approaching him. It's like a dream. Zhu Minglang felt that God had not treated him unfairly. Before his head fell off, gave him a very charming dream. Under the dim oil lamp, and the surrounding walls were cold and dark. The porcelain white body in his arms was so hot. Minglang couldn't help but shout out. He thought it was all a hallucination before death. But unexpectedly, soon, his echo came from the enclosed area. He observed his surroundings. He found himself in a dungeon. The slightly shaking oil lamp was not an illusion. He stretched out his hand to touch, and he could even feel the heat. Suddenly, a nice voice of King Ming was heard. Right beside Zhu Minglang. Zhu Minglang turned his head, and he found that there was a naked woman lying beside him. What's going on? He wasn't dreaming just now. Her appearance was clearly the sculpture standing in the center of the city. She was the beauty like a mirror fairy, but her methods were those of a ruthless emperor's Valkyrie. You're awake. You look great. It seems that this little vagrant served you well last night. A woman's voice like a fox, spy, came from the high iron window. I don't know if the people over there heard it. The sister who is as dazzling as the sky, sleeping with a little beggar. How many hearts will be broken? But don't worry, sister. I will definitely spread this to everyone's ears and become the most memorable topic after dinner. The voice of the fox spy continued. The Valkyrie didn't speak. She used her long hair to cover herself. Unfortunately, she was thin where she should be. And her big parts are big, but not all of her body. Jian Zhu Minglang was still peeking at her. The Valkyrie punched him. Zhu Minglang said, aggrieved, Haven't you seen me too? Now we should think about how to escape from here. Minglang opened his right palm. Like magic, he conjured a small milky white ice worm. Go, open the lock. I know you can do it. Zhu Minglang said to the little ice worm. After a while, the sound of the chain falling off came. The little ice bug's arrogant look is cute. You help me up. The emperor was a little weak. Obviously, he was poisoned by some love. Zhu Minglang said, Do you still need my help, Valkyrie? I won't do it. You jump out by yourself. After another round of punches and kicks, he stepped on Zhu Minglang's shoulder barefoot and struggled to climb out of the dungeon. The female emperor hesitated to look back at Zhu Minglang. Zhu Minglang was still peeking at her. She threw Zhu Minglang into the dungeon. The dungeon walls are smooth. Without someone to pull him, it's impossible to climb up. Women, the prettier, the less trustworthy. Zhu Minglang shook his head helplessly. Put on and I'll pull you up. A voice came in from outside the window. Put on and I'll pull you up. The Empress found 2 large sacks from somewhere in the dungeon. Found 2 large sacks. She tore open the sacks and made them into clothes to wear. Zhu Minglang immediately smiled. He quickly put on the sack clothes. He held the slender hand that the Empress extended. But they were both poisoned. It took them a lot of effort to climb through the window. After pulling Zhu Minglang up, the Empress was out of breath. It seems that the toxin has been in his body. As a man with great martial arts, he was no different from a weak woman now. Follow me. Don't make any noise. The Empress whispered. You are familiar with this dungeon. Minglang also asked in a low voice. Finally, they used a secret passage. They successfully left the city. However, Minglang was accompanied by beauties along the way. Although it was very hard to crawl all the way, but it was worth it. The scene returns to Yongcheng. The sun hadn't risen yet, like real flames, shining on the whole city and streets. Even the darkest corners also became extremely transparent. People on the road fled in all directions. A golden dragon was flying over the streets of Yongcheng and freely bathed the crowd with the flames it spewed. He raised his head and spits out fire. All the living people on the road turned to ashes. He swept his tail across the city wall. High-rise buildings collapsed, and shops all collapsed. The red light of the Yongcheng City Lord's mansion shines on the face of the new city lord. At this time, Luo Xiao, a moron, came over. He said, Look, are you satisfied with this scene? This venerable moron? I don't have any deep hatred with you. Why do you want to harm the whole city? It turned out that Luo Xiao was looking for the whereabouts of the god, but saw a woman next to him. Luo Xiao said, Venerable, the person you want was overthrown by Jiao Mi not long ago and became a prisoner and then was imprisoned in the dungeon. He said what? Luo Xiao's tone has completely changed. He was disdainful and rebellious before, but now he could clearly feel the coldness. Luo Shao suddenly stretched out his hand, grabbed the neck of the mayor's daughter. He said, "If he is a pearl, you are no different from stinky mud. You bitches who grow up in the rotten soil. There's no need to live in this world." As soon as he finished speaking, in the open sky outside the hall, a fire dragon with a blazing body slowly opened its mouth. The throat was as hot as a forge. "Farmer Luo Shao," a laughter sounded. "What's so funny?" Farmer Luo Shao looked at the ground. The charming woman who was in pain and madness, the daughter of the city lord, replied, "I understand. Before you became more wrong, you were just the sand in that woman's eyes. The eyes you can't forget. Your infatuated lips. In the end, all were enjoyed by that humble beggar." He laughed lowly and roared sometimes and went crazy like a real ghost. "Die!" Mulangshi Luo Shaobao shouted angrily. The powerful force instantly tore the woman apart. Luo Shao jumped up, stepped on the wide and thick golden dragon's wings. The fire dragon flapped its wings and flew into the clouds. The city of Yang was burned to ruins, became smaller and smaller under Luo Shao's feet. The city was filled with flowing red. Whether it's a soldiers, nobles, their pupils disappeared in the flowing lava. Minglang finally crawled out of the dungeon. The two looked back at the burning Yongcheng city, and the Dragon Creek flames everywhere. "I don't know which Morong is here." Minglang said to Li Yunzi that you are like this now. "Your power has not recovered. Why don't you go to my house to avoid the limelight?" Shin followed. They walked for 3 days and nights. They finally escaped back to Minglang's small Sang town. Once they entered their small courtyard house, Minglang was physically and mentally exhausted. Minglang, who was sleeping deeply, opened his eyes, staring at the Valkyrie sleeping beside him, seeing the tears hanging on her eyelashes. He couldn't help but let out a sigh. She is the mayor of Yongchang. Her power was taken away, and her chastity. She was in need. She hid in a small house full of the smell of residual wind. Minglang thought to himself that in his eyes, I'm just a beggar in his eyes. Soon he fell asleep from exhaustion. In the morning, Zhu Minglang woke up. He soon smelled the tantalizing aroma of fried food. It smells good. Is the neighbor frying rolls again? But soon, Zhu Minglang saw a heartbreaking scene. The Valkyrie held a long chopstick, skillfully put each fat meat silkworm, and dipped them heavily in the sweet potato starch, and then threw them directly into the oil pan. My big meat silkworm. Minglang groaned. Saying that, Minglang went out to buy today's food. She was beautiful. An extraordinary temperament. When it's time to eat, why is it so cruel? Minglang on the road was also unforgettable about it. This is what an old gentleman on the street told the children. Legend. All living things have their own dragon gate. After crossing, they will transform into dragons. Dragon is like the sun, moon, and stars. Hanging high in the sky and brilliant. There's a kind of person. They look for the rules of drawing dragons. And look for those who might draw dragons, but lack other conditions, to help them cross the dragon gate. This is Morong Shi. The child said happily, I will definitely become a Morong teacher in the future. The old man laughed and said that the price of meat silkworms has risen recently. Our Shaosang town can make a fortune. Ming Lang thought of his big meat materials and felt sad and puzzled. After the time on the street, Ming Lang returned home. He saw the table in the courtyard.